Jonesboro City Council, Jonesboro City Councilman Bobby Long, or Alderman as they're called, he had an interesting Facebook post where he linked to the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics a screenshot of special elections and the disparity. Can we show that real quick? This is the disparity between special elections. You've seen it before. Low voter turnout, which essentially means if you've got voter turnout in a special election of only 19%, you then have a 76% chance of passing your tax increase. If you've got voter turnout in a primary of 24% of the people, you have a 61% chance of passing your tax increase. But if you hold that in a general election, you have 44% voter turnout and a 46% chance of passing the tax increase, which is why Jonesboro's now passed or called for a special election September the 10th to pass a sales tax, a 1 cent sales tax. Alderman Bobby Long writing, I had an interesting conversation with a lady who worked with a legislative audit for 30 years. I asked if she could give me an example of a municipality that ran an event center or park, such as aquatic centers or water parks, that broke even or made money. She said no. She stated that user fees would be such that the normal citizen couldn't afford it, so the city has to take the loss to keep it affordable. The Tax Foundation ran an article on July 10th, 2019, which states 5 states with the highest average combined state and local sales tax are Tennessee and Arkansas, Louisiana, Washington, and Alabama. The 5 states with the lowest average combined rates are Alaska, Hawaii, Wyoming, Wisconsin, and Maine. It goes on to say state and local governments should be cautious about raising rates too high relative to their neighbors, because doing so would yield less revenue than expected. Okay, something to think about. Hang on a second, because I got to keep going down. Now it talks about Jonesboro, and then he goes down and he says, he asks some questions. If this tax increase is passed, what would the new rate have to be in order to maintain and continue funding not only one, but possibly over 10 new facilities, because that's what's being talked about, past the 12 years the tax is supposed to be, levied on the people? Remember, this tax does absolutely nothing to address the reserve spending the city has had to engage in over the past few years. Yet, if this passes, this could be one of the most aggressive expansions of city-owned and operated facilities in recent history. Just a side note, I saw where an additional $6 million in mosquito control will be pushed. Will this be continued as well? Or are we hoping to eradicate the mosquito population so we won't have to issue, or we won't have an issue in 12 years? I had to ask. Do the cost estimates include land? Do the cost estimates include hiring, training, and benefits of new city employees, not just now, but past 12 years? What would be the anticipated user fees for each proposed facility? And would those fees be such that the average person could afford them? Remember, the higher the fees, the less cost to the city, but the fewer people can afford to pay them. The lower the fees, the more cost to the city, but more citizens can afford to pay them. What is the additional cost to the city for each event center or park, and where will that money come from? Utilities, staffing, insurance, upkeep, maintenance. If we can anticipate a loss on each such project, how many current city departments will have to see reductions in budgets in order to compensate for the overall loss on possibly greater than 10 new facilities? Why were we not afforded this list with the numbers weeks ago when I asked for them prior to the vote to be put on the ballot? I was told that Team Jonesboro had the numbers, but would not disclose them for fear that by releasing the numbers, it would influence the Impartial Integrity Committee, and then that would become the list, and we don't want that. And we have audio of that. This Facebook post was so thoughtful and asks basic questions that just, if you have any guardianship of the taxpayer dollar, like if you're just trying to make sure and watch out for the taxpayer, and that means everybody who pays sales tax, that's a very thoughtful post. And I don't think any of those questions have been asked. Here now to talk more about this, we do have the coordinator from the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party, Iris Stevens. Iris.
Hey.
What do you think about this?
I think Bobby Long has asked great questions during this whole process, from the first meeting where this was discussed, not the presentation, but the first city council meeting, the first reading. I've thought, why hasn't this been, why wasn't this in their proposal, to look specifically at this? Because he's right. We don't know the answers to any of these. It's just as if, well, we want this. Let's just go out and buy it and have the city pay for it.
Right.
I thought that was a good way to put it. There's no guardianship, or there does not look to be any guardianship of the taxpayer dollar, because you're going to ask, the elderly, the retired, the on fixed income, low income, they're all going to be paying this tax, and every dollar adds up. I think a lot of people who may be a little bit better off financially don't think about that when they do this. They go, well, it's a great project, it's only an extra penny.
Yeah.
Well, that penny adds up, and we see that in the way taxes affect areas.
What do you think about the list now? Because last time I talked to you, there wasn't a list with dollar figures attached to each one of these items, like Children's Museum, bike trails, aquatic center.
I thought it was amazing. I looked at that, and I'm sorry, my first reaction is, they can't possibly think that we believe they're going to be able to do all of this. It's just not going to work, and I'm far more concerned about the cost down the road than just the initial cost that they've mentioned, which, as Bobby said, we're not told, does this include land? Does it include all of the things that you mentioned? Or is this just the aquatic center itself, or just the pool itself, or whatever? But then down the road, we're going to be stuck with this. And I don't say stuck because, goodness knows, some of these projects I think look fine if they're paid for correctly. We haven't been told whether or not they've got any corporate sponsorship yet. Now, that was mentioned, but we haven't been told whether they do or not. Are some of the, movers and shakers in this area, are they actually going to kick in 10 or 15 or $20 million for any of these projects? We need to know that before they come to us with their hats out, wanting our money.
Yeah.
This is for just projects over $100 million. Because half of that goes, the other half would go to the police and fire.
Right.
But over $100 million they're wanting, and it's still a very empty proposal. No matter what kind of PR that they're doing with all their little meetings and rallies and their rollout and rally, which I thought was great, and I don't know who their PR person is, but he deserves whatever they're paying for him.
That's great. That's great. No, I heard it was a success, based on that criteria for sure. Well, okay, so, I'm just thinking, I know they need the tax, right? Let's talk about the fact that the city actually needs this way more than maybe they're letting on, because we've been getting into our surplus. Our Jonesboro has been
$6.5 million they pulled down.
Okay.
And in one point, of course, you don't always get an accurate story, through the paper or whatever. But one person had said that was only half of the possible deficit, which is a scary thought if 6.58 million is only half. And of course, I don't know, because you can't guarantee that what they said was accurate.
Yeah.
Because I haven't talked to that person.
Well, so I guess what I would say is if it's 6.5 million, let's just say it is 6.5 million, I have to say, okay, well, all of the things that are being promised to all of these different groups, you're going to get a renovation of this facility, you're going to get a new facility, you're going to get this. Before any of that happens, we know that 6.5 million, because they're not going to cut anything, right?
No.
So this tax increase is going to go to plug that hole first.
That was a question that was asked by one of the first questioners at one of the first meetings where we could ask questions, and he was shut down almost immediately, because basically his question was, are you going to take this money and plug some of these holes? How much of this money is going to go there rather than projects? And see, that hasn't been discussed at all, because theoretically, according to what they're saying, all of this money will go toward their projects. But that's not possible if you're already running that kind of a deficit in the city. Yeah,
or let's say they've already got money in their general budget allocated for this project.
Yes.
Well, now the new tax dollar goes to fund that, and then the old money then gets. It's a shell game. You were here 10 years ago when they did this. I was here 10 years ago. I remember that they had police officers and firemen on on the corners of the busiest streets, holding up signs saying save our jobs or whatever they said, vote for the tax, not save our jobs, but that they were using the
Well, I
police and
think some
fire.
of them were told that if we don't get the money,
But that was never true. They had the money. They just wanted anyway. And
well,
so
that's why there is the amount of skepticism toward this project that there is because so many times we have not felt like we've been actually told the truth and that
Yeah.
we've had everything exposed. Talk about transparency. They Scott McDaniel has said repeatedly, this is a transparent process. But I'm sorry, this is not. When we don't know the details, this is not transparent.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a tax that I think, for all intents and purposes, will be permanent. It'll
Yeah.
be a permanent
Oh, yeah,
tax
of
because
course.
they'll have to have that money. And as I spoke to a Team Jonesboro member here a week or so ago, he said, well, if it's not successful, when we come to, re-up the tax or whatever, he said that they won't vote for it. And I looked at him and I
No.
said, I don't think you, I said, I totally disagree. How can you not? Are we going to let the aquatic center go down, the pools go down, the museum go? I said, and that's what they will do. They will tell us, well, So I said, it doesn't make any difference whether these projects are successful or not.
Also, not to mention, I mean, again, I was here 10 years ago. Matter of fact, as soon as I started my career in radio, this was a little battle,
Yes.
mini battle, and it passed that they passed their tax increase. Nobody remembers, unless you do this for a living or an
Yes.
activist like you are. Nobody remembers what they were saying 10 years ago.
No, they don't. Very
Except-
few people. It's like very few people remembered. Even Scott McDaniel didn't remember that we had traded our sanitation fees for the increase in that tax in the year 2000. I remembered it because I thought, well, if I might actually get something for it. And then they get up, Team Jonesboro, and says, well, we don't have sanitation fees. Well, yes, we do. We rolled them into that tax that we paid that we're still paying. And of course, the city government, we've got members of the city government who would like to reinstate a sanitation fee and things like that because I've got the documentation from the city council meetings where they talk, well, we would have X number of dollars if we went ahead and put this in again. Well, then we're paying double, aren't we? Because one of the reasons they passed the tax was so that we could eliminate the sanitation fee. So if then they impose a sanitation fee, then we're paying double on it.
Yeah.
And that's why I tried to let them know, no, we already have a sanitation fee. It was rolled into that tax increase.
Okay, so out of these projects, which one? I mean, if you had to pick one, which one would you
I'd say
think?
the pools. We
Okay.
only have one pool in this city, and when
Okay.
my kids were growing up, we had two. And I can see that, and I could even see making it to where you could have competitions at it. I can even see that because that would benefit the kids, the schools and things like that. But another question even about that, why are the schools not getting together and using some of their money to put in pools that would benefit all of the ones in the area? Even the ones who don't have swimming could institute a swimming program
Right.
for that.
Right.
So there are always alternate ways of funding anything that you see. An aquatic center might be fun, but I think Paragould needs to be called and see how that's working out for them.
Yeah, and there's also, I think there's photos of a pool in Batesville that looks strange. So we need to make sure we don't do
Well,
that.
they seem to think it's successful, but a lot of times something that looks successful to the public is not anywhere near as successful on paper.
Oh,
so
right,
that's
right,
you
right.
need to find out from your
Okay,
city.
well, I wanted to point that out though, because you're the coordinator of the NEAT
Mm-hmm.
party, and you're sitting here saying it's not like unreasonable. So I'm
Right.
just saying, like, why?
And you look at the projects, they're not bad projects, but it's like anything else that you do. Where is the money for it?
Yeah.
And, how are you going to justify spending it? I'd
Well-
like to have lots of things that I don't have the money for.
What has been remarkable to me is to see the team Jonesboro come together, and they just have this. It's like a Christmas list almost.
Exactly.
And
they're very cheerful about it, and it sounds wonderful. And this
it
just
sounds
looks so
great,
good.
but I really think if they had to just, I think it just comes across as elitist, and I don't think it's resonating very well with the rest of the community that is.
I've heard a lot of negativity about it from the rest of the community, and we're not talking about just the people who are elderly on fixed income. There are a lot of people who do not like how it looks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they should have picked one. They should have.
Exactly.
They should have.
So maybe 3 projects.
yeah.
Let's do something about this.
And you should have researched
Yes,
them to
exactly.
death. And I mean, like, let's get an estimate. Let's get another estimate. And let's talk about maintenance. Let's talk about staffing. Let's release all of that. How would we staff it? Pay for the lifeguards. You
Yes,
gotta,
exactly.
all of that stuff. But nothing. And it's like then somebody be like, okay, all right, we know where the money's we know where it's gonna be spent. We know how much money's gonna be raised for for the most
Exactly.
part.
It boils down to, are you for it or against it?
Yes.
And here,
Yes.
you might think the projects are great, but my stars, you don't have any kind
We
of.
don't even know if they're going to be done
Exactly.
because it sets up some committee and then they decide. I'm sure after they fill the budget hole, over 12 years, which projects get. So you're just giving some committee,
Carte blanche.
Carte blanche.
And now they don't spend the money. We know that it filters through the integrity team or integrity panel, whatever they call it.
Right.
It filters through them, and then they send the projects to the city council.
Right.
But
I
a
know,
lot of
yeah.
these projects have already been mentioned as desirable
Yeah.
by the city council. So why would they turn those down?
No. I mean,
Exactly.
I know that's the process, but come on,
Yeah.
it's basically
Well, I just
a
wanted to get that
formality.
bit about
Yeah.
the city council will still have.
Yeah. Well, you need to say
say.
that. We want to be
Plus the
factually
fact that it's
accurate.
already been in a lot of the city council suggestions and things like that, and some of their plans. We've got a plan that goes back to 2013 that suggests some of these things.
Well,
So,
and maybe there will be corporate sponsorships. I mean, maybe that actually will happen. I'm sure we'll know.
that would be nice to know going in,
Going
rather
in,
than
right?
rather than having to show up
If
for the
it
ballot.
passes, then I'll do. Then
Exactly.
We'll, yeah,
That's not a good solution.
Well, Iris, we'll have you on again, obviously, and to talk more about this.
Thank
so
you.
I appreciate it.
One more thing.
Yes.
We have members of Team Jonesboro that have agreed to show up at our Tea Party meeting on August 5th, this coming Monday.
That's great news.
They, I invited them because I say, we need information.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a lot of information that we want. And so I asked them if they would be willing to show up, and they agreed they would send a couple of representatives to our Tea Party meeting so that we
that's
could
good.
discuss things.
That's good, and I know you guys are always civil, and
always.
that'll be good. I mean, and that's that speaks to their character, that they're willing to engage
I
with
think
people
so,
that they
too.
know
Exactly.
are hostile
that are
toward
primarily
them. Yeah.
opposed to
Opposed to
not
it.
opposed to the project, concerned about the process.
Yeah, concerned about the taxpayer money, really. is what it
Exactly.
is. Okay. Ira Stevens, everybody. By the way, before you go, let me ask you. So you were a guest at the Calvin
Yes,
Coolidge
I
Awards.
was.
So tell us.
It
about
was great. I tell you what, I enjoyed being around those. Got to visit with a bunch of legislators, and there were conservatives, so you're sharing your values and things, and it was just a lot of fun. And I cannot think of his name. I tried all the way up here to think the guy that did the pseudo
the magic.
yeah,
Yeah,
the magic.
Mr. Joey Williams.
I thought it was Joe Williams, but anyway,
yeah.
he was so cute. It was so funny, and it was
Yeah.
just, I very much enjoyed.
Can you believe he pulled a $100 bill out of a lemon?
Yeah, right. Yes.
But I mean, it was soaking wet.
Yeah.
How did he get that $100 bill inside a lemon?
Well,
that it was-
magicians never tell their secrets,
know,
so I didn't
but-
even bother to ask.
I know.
But it was cute.
Well, I mean,
And
I did. He won't tell me.
the food was wonderful. The food was absolutely gourmet.
Yeah.
So it was a great night, and it was worth going 2 hours down there and 2 hours
Yeah,
back.
good. Well, I'm
So
glad.
it was a lot of fun.
Well, thanks for coming, Iris.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
All right, folks, we're going to take a break. We'll be back here in just a moment.